Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being on time. We are going to get started. I should let you know that this session is being recorded. So if you need to rewatch it later, maybe there are some concepts that you want to go through again, that will be available on eCentennial, and I'll show you where to get that after class. So welcome to GS 182. Which is the introductory biology course. My name is Vincent, Vincent Wong. You can just call me Vincent. And if you need to contact me for any reason, you can email me at vwong@centennialcollege.ca. Okay? Emailing is the best way to get in touch with me. You might find a phone number somewhere on the college webpage. Don't call me. Emailing is much faster. I usually reply your email within the hour if it's during workday. And at most, I'm gonna get back to you no more than 1 day. Okay. So if you email me and you don't hear back from me for more than a day, that means I did not get your email, and you should just send it again. Sometimes email gets lost, or maybe you send it to the wrong person. So if you don't hear back from me for more than a day, just email it again. Okay. I want to start by going through some basic information related to the course before we start today's lecture. So just give you some background information as to where to find things, as well as the format of the assessments and the structure of the class and all that stuff. Okay? That's probably going to take about half an hour. Feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. You can ask the question by unmuting yourself, or you can use the chat box if you prefer it that way. So I am guessing all of you received an email from me. I sent it out last week, and then I sent one out earlier this morning, just in case you missed it. I just post the course homepage on in the chat box, so you can take a look at that. It will take you to the course homepage here. Right? So when you email me, it's important you let me know which section you are from, right? Because I have multiple sessions, and depending which session you are from, the information you need might be a little bit different. So you are from section 201. Okay, so when you email me, just say, hi, my name is da-da-da, my student number is whatever, and I'm from section 201. Okay, that will just make it easier for me to get you the right information faster. So once you logged into the homepage, you will see a news item area. This is where I will post information related to upcoming tests, and I will also give you important links that you can click on to get notes, for example. So I'll update this after each class. Yeah, I'll say, hey, the recording is available now, or the class notes has been updated, and so on and so forth. So please make sure you check this frequently. Okay? It's our primary way of communication. Another important thing is the content tab here. Okay, so if you click on the content, it will take you to everything related to the course. Okay, all the lecture notes are available on eCentennial already. Let me just switch myself to student mode here, so it looks the same as what you would see. So if you click on, again, content, you will see some folders on the left side. And if you click on lecture, you will see that all the lectures are posted already. Okay, so there are 10 lectures in total. And basically, the course is divided into two halves. Okay, the first half, we'll just call it like Unit 1. Unit 1, and then we will have Unit 2. For Unit 1, it would be Lecture 1 to Lecture 5. Okay, first half of the course. And for Unit 2, it will be Lecture 6 to Lecture 10. So in the first half of the course, we will have 2 quizzes, quiz 1 and quiz 2. Each will be 10%. I'll tell you exactly what's on the quiz as we get closer to it, but typically quiz 1 is going to be lecture 1 and 2, and then quiz 2 is going to be lecture 3 and 4. We also will be doing a lab, which is also 10%, and then there will be a test, which is 20%. So the test is going to be all of lecture 1 to 5, as well as the lab. Okay, so the lab is done virtually. You don't have to come to campus. There's no equipment you need to buy or anything like that. Everything is done online. And I'll tell you more about the lab when we get closer to the lab day. And then that's it for Unit 1. For the second half of the course, it's pretty much the same format. You're gonna have to do quiz number 3, which is another 10%. Quiz number 4. We're gonna have lab number 2, which is also 10%. And then you're gonna have test 2. So test 2 is 20%. Now, test 2 will only include information from the second half. Right? After the test number 1, you will not be tested on these material anymore. In terms of the format of the test and the quiz, it will be done online, obviously. And there will be multiple choice questions. Multiple choice questions are standard information recollection type of question. Right? It's like, can you recall certain facts from the notes? Right? Which of the following is an example of a polysaccharide? Right? So you would have to, either have memorized that or you're able to recall it, and those would be a standard multiple choice question. There will be application questions where it's a little bit harder. It's still in the form of multiple choice, but you have to apply what you've learned. You have to take the knowledge that you have and try to apply it in a scenario in some cases, and those require a little bit of thinking. So these are like 1 mark each. And then you have what's called multi-select question. Multi-select. Okay, or MS, multi-select question. These are 2 marks each. They have multiple correct answers, so you have to choose all the right ones in order to get full marks. If you choose extra answers, then marks are going to be deducted. And sometimes you might also have short answers. Short answer questions. So you will have to type out written response to the questions. In terms of the time limit, the quiz are usually 40 minutes. Some are longer depending on the topics. And for the test is usually around 70 minutes. Again, all this information I'll post online for you when we get closer to the test date. In terms of the time frame which you have to take the assessment, the quizzes and the tests, they are available from 6 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. on the day off. Okay, so we're gonna take a look at the schedule, but let's say quiz 1 is on September 24th. I'm making this up, okay? So on 24th, you would have between 6 a.m. to basically midnight to access the quiz. Once you start the quiz, though, the timer is not gonna stop. Right? So it's not like you can start at 8 a.m., quit and then come back to do it later on in the afternoon. Right? Once you start, you have to sit and finish the whole quiz. Right? Otherwise, if you come back later, the timer is going to run out and you won't be able to do it anymore, right? So that's that. Does anybody have any questions so far? No? Pretty straightforward, I hope. Okay, so if you go back to the homepage here, one of the first things you should go download is the course schedule. So it's going to be under useful information. And there's a course outline. Now the course outline, you should keep a digital copy yourself, because some students, they move on to another college or something, and then they also have biology, and then the student might want to say, hey, I took biology at Centennial. Can I be exempt from it? Can I like not take it again? Then often they will ask you to give them the course outline. So they will look at the course outline and see whether it's a comparable course, and then they will base their decision. They'll give you the decision based on the course outline. So, but you want to keep a copy of this, not just for my course, right? But for like your chemistry, your math, and whatnot. So you can read through all these things if you want. I mean, it's basically what I told you, right? There's quiz 1, quiz 2, so on and so forth. And if you scroll down far enough, there is going to be like a weekly topical. Right? It tells you what is supposed to be happening each week. So this is great, but it's not very pragmatic. Okay, like I think it's confusing for many people. So you just keep this for your own record. But to find out when things are actually happening, you should be downloading the weekly schedule, right? So click on the weekly schedule again. So you go to content, useful information, and then weekly schedule. I'll post a link for you afterwards. And then this basically maps out when things are happening. Now, you guys, I don't know if you know that, but many people actually don't know this. If you look at your schedule, right, on eCentennial, sorry, on MyCentennial, hold on, let me see how this works. Hold on a second. There you go. If you look at your weekly schedule, like you might see that there's no class on Monday, right? But that's actually not true. It's because Monday is was a Labor Day, right? So you have to click on next week, and then you will see there are actually classes going on. Okay, so we actually meet twice a week. We meet on Wednesday as well as Monday in the afternoon. All right, so make sure you just be aware of that. And since we have a class on Monday, you actually lose a few classes, 3 classes in total. Right? So Labor Day, we lost one already. And then there is going to be another closure on September 30th for the Truth and Reconciliation Day, and for Thanksgiving as well. Okay, so like we are a little bit tight on time. We'll see how it goes. Okay, if at some point we are not able to cover enough material, we might need to have some extra classes. But hopefully it's not gonna come to that. Okay, so our first quiz is gonna be September 23rd, which covers lecture 1 and 2. Like I said, on that day, we still have class, you still have to come, but then you will have access to the quiz from 6 a.m. all the way to midnight, basically. Okay. And then later on, you will have the Beetroot Lab due, and then you will have a test. So basically, download this file, stick it on a fridge or something. It's very important. It tells you when things are happening. Okay. All right. If you go back to content, and you go to lecture, so these are the folders for each lecture. Today, we're going to be doing scientific method. So hopefully you've downloaded a copy of the lecture notes. You can download the actual PowerPoint slides. It will look like this, right? And you can type on it and whatnot. Or if you are trying to print it out, which actually might not be a bad idea, it's good to have something to write on physically, to take notes on. Then you might prefer the 6 slides per page. It's the exact same PowerPoint, but it's just cheaper, right, for printing, and you save paper and you save ink and you save money. So some people prefer that. Also, very important is to print out the study guide. The study guide is something that we work on in class. we're not going to take up the whole thing because we just don't have time for that. But there are sometimes certain questions that are important, so I would take it up in class with you, and whatever I don't take up, I will post the answer for you to check on eCentennial as well. Okay, so for each class, you have to have the study guide as well as the PowerPoint slides, either the digital version or the printout version. So if you go back to the, and by the way, like all these are being recorded, right? So if you don't know where to find things, you can just watch the recording afterwards. There are additional student resources that you can use. Each folder, each lecture is going to have a supplementary reading link. So if you click on that, it will open up the online textbook for you. The online textbook is just for supplementary reading, right? Like you're not going to be responsible for things that I haven't taught you in class. Right? The online textbook goes into quite a bit of detail. So, you know, if you want to read about it, great, but you're not going to be tested on it. Okay? All the test questions will revolve around what I teach you in the PowerPoint slides, as well as from the study guide. Let's go back here to the study resources. There are some video resources for you as well. So instead of you having to go through the internet and find videos to watch for things that you don't understand, I did that for you. Okay? I put everything onto this. It's called a Padlet, and it has videos on topics that people tend to have trouble with. So you can just watch it. Okay? Again, some videos are go into like more in depth than we do in class. Any additional information that is shown in the video, you're not responsible for on tests and quizzes. Okay, so here's just a collection of them. Like many people get confused about deductive and inductive reasoning. So you can watch a video on that if you need help, right? Sometimes it helps, right, to listen to someone else explain to it. Other studying resources, there are crosswords you can do. It really helps you with the vocabulary. So for example, a sham treatment. Does anybody know what a sham treatment is called by any chance? Yeah, so let's say you don't know, right? Okay, because you haven't taken the course yet, and you can click solve, and then it tells you, oh, it's placebo, right? So you can try this. I think it works on most phone as well. So it's a great way to get the vocabularies in your head and familiarize all these terminologies before the test. Okay, each lecture will also have some self-quiz you can take. The self-quiz are not worth any marks. You can take them as many times as you want. They are significantly easier than the actual thing though, okay? So don't use that to judge whether you're ready for the real thing or not. It's a good starting point, but don't stop there. You have to keep on studying. And this particular one says requires Respondes lockdown browser. I don't know if your other teacher told you about it yet, but many of the courses that you're taking, when you do assessment online, you have to install this lockdown browser. It's a software that basically prevents you from going onto the internet during the test. Okay? It prevents you from opening additional tabs in your browser. It prevents you from accessing files on your computers. So like it's just something that you have to do. Now, having said that, like I'm not naive, right? Like I know you guys have cell phones and whatnot, right? But this is just like an additional way to make it a little bit harder for you to take advantage of those things, I guess. And I'm not saying you're not allowed to use your notes and whatnot. It's fine if you want to use your notes. But the test questions are created in a way that you won't have time to look through all the notes when you're doing it. Okay, so it's fine to have them for quick references if there's really something that you don't remember, but you still have to study quite a bit to prepare for the quizzes and the tests. Okay, so if you click on this one, that's like what a real quiz would look like. And then at the bottom, for the first time when you're doing it, it will say download and install Lockdown Browser. Okay, so you should try to do that sometime this week. Again, you're not just using it for my course, you're going to be using it for chemistry and probably math as well. Okay. Some courses might need you to have a camera. I'm not going to do that for my course. You only have to install this Lockdown Browser. Does anybody have any question at all? No? You all are with me? Sheila,
Yes.
you have, oh
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Let's see what else are there. I think that's pretty much it for now. That's everything I want to tell you for the time being. Study guide answer is empty right now because I want you to try the study guide first before I give you the answer. Class notes is empty. I will give it to you afterwards as well. And yes, the recordings. Okay, so I'll post a link after class to show you the recordings. But it basically look like this. That's the wrong file, sorry. Yeah, so after each class, I am going to post the the recording link. Right? It's just gonna be on YouTube anyways, okay? You guys are 201. 202 is my other class. Okay, so like just make sure when you watch the recordings, you watch the ones that's related to your class. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's everything I want to tell you. If there are no questions, then we're gonna go ahead and get started with the lecture. If you think of anything, just type it in the chat box, okay? So here we go. Our first lesson is called scientific method. Okay? This lecture is, many people think it doesn't really have much to do with biology, which is kind of true. Scientific method is more about how science is done in general. And you actually need to have a good understanding of scientific methods in order to do well on your lab. So in the first lab, for example, you'll be doing the analysis on beetroot permeability, and you will be using a lot of the steps that we are going to be learning about in the scientific methods. So if you get stuck on the lab later, right, this is the lecture to come back to get some more information for it. And as I said, my email is on the first page of every single slide deck in case you need to find me for whatever reason. So what is biology? Biology is the scientific study of living things. The scientific study of living things. It turns out under biology, there are many different disciplines. There are many subdivisions of biology. For example, we have anatomy. Anatomy is the study of body structures. You can think of anatomy as what is this called? What is the name of this organ? Oh, it's the heart. What is that thing that's inside the heart? Oh, it's called a valve. Right? So different names of different structures, that's anatomy. Physiology, on the other hand, is what does it do? What does it do? Right? So what is the function of those valves in the heart? What are the functions of these air sacs in the lungs? So anatomy and physiology often goes hand in hand. And that's actually a course that you will be taking next semester, GS 215, anatomy and physiology. Yeah, I also teach that course, so maybe we'll meet again. Histology is the study of cells and tissues. Cells are basically the functional unit of living things. The functional unit of living things. You and I are made up of trillions of cells. Okay? Each cell is individually alive, and they work together to make us alive. Tissues are basically like a collection of cells, collection of different cells. Okay. By the way, I turned on the caption. If anyone needs to see the caption to follow along, okay, you can turn that on on Zoom. So histology is the study of these cells and tissues. Tissues, we have things like connective tissue that glue things together. We have fat tissues that store energy for us. And studying these cells and tissue is called histology. So over here, you can see there's a slide of cells. Anybody want to guess what organ this might be from? Just wild guess. There are no wrong answer. Okay, just tell me what you think. What organ might that be from? If you guys participate, it will make the lecture go by easier. Okay? Otherwise, it's a very passive experience, right, for you. Omar said this is the brain. Very good. Reggie Pan said is liver. Okay, maybe one more guess. Anyone?
Spleen.
It's the spleen. Okay, so we have different ideas of what this might be, right? So this is actually kidney, and that's okay. Like, I mean, I don't expect anyone to recognize what this is, right? But after you take next semester anatomy and physiology, when you see something like this, you will know right away is the kidney. Okay, so that's something you can look forward to. Another branch of biology is genetics. Genetics is the study of heredity. So we will learn that later on in this course, lecture 8 actually. So we will look at situations where, you know, if you have brown eyes and your spouse have blue eyes, what's the probability that your child will have brown eyes? Yes, there are some calculations we can learn how to figure that out. And we will also be looking at biotechnology. Okay, so things like PCR, which you might have heard of, right? Like a PCR test during COVID. We'll be looking at gene editing. Right, all those things are coming later on in the course. So there are many different branches of biology. These are just some of the ones that we will be doing in this program. There are other things like evolution, right? Things like population dynamics. Those are also some branches of biology, but we won't be doing them. So the definition of biology is the scientific study of living things. So it makes sense for us to talk about what exactly is living and what is non-living. I'm pretty sure if I give you something and then I ask you whether it's living or not, most of you would not have trouble, you know, classifying it. Right? You know, a zebra is alive; it's living. You know, a tree is living, and all these things, teddy bear, chairs, skateboards, they are non-living. Right? Most people would have no trouble doing that. But I want to ask the class, right? What are some parameters? What are some categories that you use to help you decide whether something is living or not? Like, how do you know something is if something is living or not? If I show you something that you've never seen before and I ask you whether it's living or not, what are you going to use to assess that?
Living things can grow, can
Okay,
move.
yeah. So you want to see if it can grow or not, right? So
Yes.
growth. Anyone else? That's a good one.
Can move.
Okay, so can it move? Can it move? But you see, a car can move, right? And you know, a plane can move as well, right? Okay, there's another one here. Omar said reproduce. Can they reproduce? Right, that's a good one. Domain, I know what you mean, Annabelle. You're talking about, like, you know, like, is it animal kingdom, plant kingdom, so on and so forth. But like which category it fits into, right? Basically, good. Adaptation, to be able to evolve. Yeah, does it breathe? Okay, yeah. So you guys have a lot of good lifespan. Does it have a lifespan, right? But a phone has a lifespan as well, right? So a lot of you have a lot of good ideas in terms of what you can use to judge whether something is living or not. But it turns out we can't just use a single factor to determine if something is living or not, right? Like I said, even though many animals moves, but like a plant doesn't move, but it doesn't mean it's not alive, right? Okay, and just because something has a lifespan does not necessarily mean is living either, right? So it turns out we have to look at a lot more characteristics and to determine whether something is living or not. Now, what's important to remember is that a lot of times in science, we try to put things into different categories to help us classify things. Okay, so in this case, you're trying to put them into living or non-living. But in many cases, there are exceptions. There are some situations where you cannot fit it into one or the other. An example of it would be like this purple ball. Anybody know what this purple ball is? What is that? It's something that you know already. Okay, it's not some weird obscure things. Okay, so we have people say it's bacteria, some people say DNA, a cell. Okay, all right. Anyone else? Last call. What this thing might be? The virus. There you go. Very good. This is a virus. Okay, for real, this is a virus. Okay, they don't all look like that, but this one does. Okay, so viruses. Do you think virus is living or non-living? What do you guys think? Now let's do a poll. We actually do a lot of polls online here. Let's just test it out. If you think it's living, please choose A. If you think it's non-living, please choose B. Okay, I got 14 response. Anyone else? Okay, good, good, good. Last couple of seconds. Anyone else? All right. Overwhelmingly, 94% of you said it is living, and then 1% said it's non-living. Well, you know what? Actually, scientists don't really know. Okay, it has characteristics of living things, but then it's also missing some of the characteristics. Particularly, a virus has the potential to reproduce. Right? They can make copies of themselves, but only after they infect a living thing. Yeah, so if you have viruses like cold virus or flu virus or COVID, just like floating around in the air, they can make more copies of themselves. The only way for them to reproduce is to infect a living thing. Okay, yeah, like a host, exactly, right? So for that reason, scientists say viruses, they have the potential to be a living thing, but there is like a condition attached to it, right? So most people don't know where to put virus. I mean, it's not really, it's more like a philosophical question almost, right? Like knowing whether it's living or non-living is not really going to help us solve the viral infection problems. But it's one of those examples where it doesn't quite fit one way or the other. And I want you to be accustomed to this, right? And a lot of things in science is not just this or that. And you will see this reoccurring theme in chemistry as well. So here we have different living things. They all look very different. You probably have seen the poison dart frog. They are covered with poison on their skin. You shouldn't be touching these things. This is a special kind of jellyfish. It's called the Portuguese man of war, named after the battleship. Apparently, if you get stung by one of these things, it's super, super painful and you need medical emergency. This guy is, it's called an oxalotl. And you might have seen it in the Ripley Aquarium. They actually have a tank with this guy in it. The point is, they all look very different, even though they are all considered as living things. So we are going to try to go through a list of 7 characteristics that are common to all living things. And some of these characteristics, you guys already mentioned it already. First characteristic. All living things exhibit some kind of complexity to it. There's some kind of ordered organization associated with living things. For example, if you look at the butterfly, if you look at the flower, right, you can split it in half and you can see there is symmetry. Right? We have symmetry, right? Like we have left-right symmetry. If you think of a starfish, it has multiple lines of symmetry. Right? We call that radial symmetry. Right? If you look at the spiral of a seashell, there are some mathematic geometry, some rules that they follow when it forms the spiral, right? And that complexity, that order, is not just something that exists on the superficial level. If you go down, if you zoom in all the way down to the cellular level, you will see that there are also organization and complexity. Over here at the bottom right, this is actually plant cells. Okay? And what you're looking at, like this circle here, this is actually a vessel for the plant. Just like us, right? We have blood vessels, but the plants, they have vessels to transport nutrients and water. And you can see it's very well organized. Like within the circle, there are like 4 different areas here. And then there's a central area that looks a little bit different. Right? So there are purpose to the design, if you would. So this kind of organization and complexity is common in all kinds of living things. When we talk about the complexity of living organisms, we try to break it down as far as we can, right? So, when we look at the cellular level, can we go even deeper? It turns out we can go all the way down to the molecular level, right? So the lowest level that we're gonna be talking about in this course is atom. Now, for those of you who don't know, and we're gonna learn more about this next week, and you will learn about it in chemistry as well. But atoms are these basic building blocks that makes up everything that we know in the universe. So, the table is made up of atoms. The air that we breathe has atoms. The water that we drink has atoms. Right? It's the building blocks of everything that exists in the universe. So, what kind of atoms makes up a living organism? I'll start you off, and you guys can give me some more ideas if you want. We humans, we have carbon. Okay? We have a lot of carbon in us, carbon atoms. What other atoms do you think we have in our bodies? Nothing obscure, okay? Just like regular stuff that you can think of. Yes, oxygen, right? We breathe oxygen all the time, so that's something that makes up the human bodies. Maybe one more. What else are you breathing in besides oxygen? Okay, yeah, there's hydrogen, although you're not really breathing that in. I was thinking something else. What's in the air mostly? Okay, carbon dioxide and monoxide. Keep those in mind first. We're gonna come back to it. What else is in the air that we breathe in? Most of the air is this stuff, and we can't use it. We just breathe it out. 70% of the air is this thing I'm looking for. It starts with an N. Yes, nitrogen. Very good. Okay, so the human body is made up of these atoms. Okay, carbon atoms, oxygen atoms, hydrogen atoms, so on and so forth. Now, these atoms can actually come together to form molecules. So we have water molecules. Does anybody know the chemical formula for water? That's right, it's H2O. There are 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen. So this water molecule has 3 atoms in it. Right? So you guys talk about carbon dioxide. That's another molecule, right? Carbon dioxide. Okay, CO2. Okay, you shouldn't have carbon monoxide in your body though. Carbon monoxide is poisonous. Okay, like it's that's why you have a detector for it at home. Now, just if you look at these molecules, they are quite small. There are only like 3 atoms in it, right? CO2 means there are 1 carbon and 2 oxygen, so 3 atoms in total. But much of the molecules in the body, much of the molecules that we have in our cells and all that, they are considered as macromolecules. Macro means really big, right? So instead of having 3 or 4 atoms, macromolecules have thousands, hundreds and thousands of atoms in it. So an example of macromolecule that we have in the body would be protein. Okay, proteins. Okay. Muscle is made up of proteins. Your hormones are made up of proteins. So that's an example of macromolecules. Does anybody have another example of macromolecules? Again, nothing obscure. I'm sure you've heard of it before. Think about the food that you eat, right? Yep, carbs. What does carb stand for, Kyle? You know? Exactly, carbohydrates. Okay. And what is that molecule that people call the blueprint of life? It determines what you look like, and so on. It's all the features about you. What is that molecule? It's 3-letter molecule that I'm looking for. That's right, DNA. Right. So these are macromolecules. They are really, really big, thousands, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of atoms. Okay, and we're gonna spend lecture 2 learning about the macromolecules. Okay, you don't have to memorize these. Okay, like I'm just giving you a preview of what's going on. Then macromolecules are gonna make these organelles, which are tiny structures inside the cell. That will be lecture 3. Lecture 3. And then basically from lecture 4 all the way to 9, we will be learning everything there is to learn about cells. Okay? And then lecture 10, we will talk about tissues. I told you like connective tissue, muscle is a tissue, right? And then that's it for this course. Right? Next semester, you will learn about organs and organ system. Okay, so give me an organ. Well, I mean, there's an organ here, right? Like that's the stomach. Okay, so stomach is an organ, and it's part of an organ system. It's part of the digestive system, and then multiple organ system is going to make up the organism. Okay, so by the end of this program, you would have learned everything in this hierarchy of organization. Any questions before we move on? Do you guys have a class this morning?
Yes.
Yeah. What was it? Just curious.
Chemistry.
Chem. Okay. All right. So you must have learned some of this thing already, right? You guys are very, very quiet. Hopefully you're with me. Okay. It's all right if you. I know you're probably a little bit tired from doing a second class. I also had a class this morning. If it makes you feel any better. Anyways, what we are talking about right now is characteristic of living things, right? So we talk about order, we talked about complexity, right? That exists not just as an organism, but all the way down to the molecular level. The second characteristic of living things is the ability to maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis, it means the ability to maintain an internal balance. Okay. Our surroundings change all the time. Temperature goes up, temperature goes down, but we have ways to keep it relatively the same inside the body. What's the normal body temperature, anybody, in degrees Celsius?
36, 37.
Yeah, 37 degrees Celsius is good. That's the normal body temperature, right? So even if it's like 30 degrees outside or if it's minus 10 outside, your body will be able to keep it at 37 degrees Celsius. That is an example of homeostasis. But body temperature is not the only thing we need to keep an internal balance of. There are many things that must be at a particular level. Too high or too low is often going to cause quite a bit of problem. Another example would be blood sugar level. Yeah, you need to have a certain blood sugar level. Too low, then you're gonna maybe feel a little bit lightheaded. Too high is not good either. So when you have a meal, your body needs to secrete like insulin, right, to help absorb those sugar. What kind of disease would have what kind of condition would have trouble controlling blood sugar? Does anybody know? Exactly, diabetes, right? So people with diabetes are not able to absorb the sugar from their blood, and that could lead to a whole bunch of problems. So that tells you how important it is to maintain homeostasis. All right, again, not just sugar, right? Salt level, blood pressure, calcium level, a whole bunch of things needs to be kept at a certain number in order for our body to function normally. Now, most of these things we are able to we take granted for these things because it just happens in the background. We don't even have to think about it. So everything your body does for you to help maintain homeostasis, we call them physiological mechanism. Okay? Physiological means the body does it for you. Okay, mechanism is just like ways or like methods. So when it's really hot outside, what is a physiological mechanism to cool you off? What does your body do for you to cool you off when it's super hot outside? Yeah, you sweat, exactly, right? It's not something you can control. It's not something you think about. Your body just automatically does it for you. So that's an example of a physiological mechanism. What about behavioral? What is something that you could do to cool yourself off? Yeah, you can drink water or splash water on yourself. Not sure which one you mean. Yeah, you can rest in the shade maybe. Okay, you can, get some ice cube. You can take off your jacket, take a cold shower, right? All these things that you do would be behavioral mechanism. All right. So there's a lizard here on the top right, and the lizard is different from us because they are cold-blooded. They don't maintain a fixed body temperature. If it's cold in the environment, their body temperature will drop. And in order to stay warm, they have to sunbath, right? So they will walk up to a rock like that and just stay there for hours just to stay warm. Do you think that's a physiological, or do you think that is behavioral mechanism? Let's do a poll. If you think it's physiological, please choose A. If you think it's behavioral, please choose B. I'm talking about the lizard doing a sun bath. Is it physiological or is it behavioral? Okay, you got to think about like who's doing it. Is the lizard doing it or is it the body doing it for it? Okay. Looks like we are half-half on this one. The answer is behavioral. Okay? Like the lizard has to like crawl on the rock, right? It's something that it does, right? It has to deliberately go to the rock and stay there, right? And soak up the sun. So in that sense, it is behavioral. The dog sticking out the tongue, that's also behavioral. Sticking out the tongue helps them cool off because the saliva evaporates, and when the saliva evaporates, it's like our sweat evaporating, it cools us off. Okay? What about if you cut your finger and then it stopped bleeding? Like even if it's a small cut, right? Like even if you don't do anything to it, it will stop bleeding after a while. Would that be physiological or would that be behavioral? A, physiological, or B, behavioral? Yeah, much better. Okay, most people got it this time. That would be physiological. All right. If you have a bigger cut, and then you squeeze on it, you put a band-aid, you apply pressure, you ice it, whatever, then those would be behavioral. Okay. So first characteristic of living things, complexity, order. Second characteristic is homeostasis. Next one, growth and development. Living things go through stages of growth and development from birth to mature adults. Most of the time, the juvenile form resembles the adult form, right? Like for humans, right? Even though we are much bigger now, and we might have things that we didn't have as a baby, like beers and whatnot. But we pretty much look the same. We resemble the baby version. Okay? Whereas something like a butterfly, the adult form looks completely different than the caterpillar, which is cut off here. But we are all familiar with the stages of a butterfly's life, right? So regardless of whether it's the same or different, all living things are going to go through some growth and some development. Okay. Next characteristic is the need for energy. Right? We don't say there is a need to eat because plants, they don't eat, right? But that doesn't mean they don't need energy. They need the energy from the sun. Right? And when it comes to eating, some are herbivores. They only eat plants. Others are carnivores. They would eat other animals. And when it comes to things like fungus, they feed on decaying matter, right? So the method of obtaining energy might be different for different organisms, but the fact that they all need energy is a universal theme for all living things. Next one is the ability to respond to stimuli. Stimuli means like some kind of environmental trigger. The singular word for stimuli is stimulus. Okay, and this goes hand in hand with the ability to maintain homeostasis. Right? Often, when there is a stimulus that trigger the body is going to respond in a way that is going to allow the internal balance to be maintained. Go back to the temperature thing. If it's really cold, that's a stimulus. Your body is going to shiver, right, to warm you up. That would be a response to it. Here is what's called a Venus flytrap. If you've never seen them before, you can look it up. It's a plant that eats bugs, right? So usually they open up, and when the bug lands on them, that's a trigger, that's a stimulus for them. It will cause them to close up, and then they will digest the bug. Right? They're doing this because of they need nitrogen. Okay? They cannot use the nitrogen from the air, and the soil they grow on is very poor in nitrogen, so they have to eat the bugs for them. If you touch something sharp, right, you automatically recoil your hand. That is an example of responding to a stimulus. So all living things do this, right? Even a bacteria. Right? If you change the temperature, if you put bacteria in a dish and then you change the temperature a little bit on one side, you can either see them move away from it or they will move towards it, depending on what kind of bacteria you're looking at. Some bacteria, they like heat. Okay, next one. Someone mentioned this earlier, I think, the ability to reproduce. So animals, we reproduce, most animal reproduce sexually. That means you need two individuals, and then they each would contribute some genetic material, and that creates the baby. But there are many living things that reproduce asexually. Right? Reproduce asexually means no partner is required, only one individual is needed. Can someone give me an example of something that reproduce asexually? You probably have some of these things at home. Not fish. I'm pretty sure fish needs a partner. Plant, yes, plant, right? Like, if you have some plants at home, sometimes you can cut off a branch and then you give it to your friend, and then they will be able to grow the same plant. Okay. Um, some bacteria, they're able to reproduce asexually. If you just have one in the dish, if you give it nutrient, it's going to divide and divide. One becomes two, two becomes four, and before you know it, they're going to have a whole colony. Okay. Yogurt, did you say what do you mean yogurt? Yogurt, as in like the bacteria in the yogurt, is that what you mean, Sheila? Maybe. Okay, so that's that. And the last characteristic that we're gonna talk about is the ability to adapt and evolve. So adaptation means it enhances the survival and or reproduction of the organism. Okay, so some organisms, well, first of all, in a population, everything looks different. Like we might not be able to tell when we look at a population of like hummingbirds, okay? But just like there are variation within the human population, there are variation within each animal species as well. And what happens is some of these variations will make it um, more favorable for the organism to survive in a particular environment. And if you are able to survive better or reproduce better, then you are going to be able to have more offspring, right? And you're going to be able to pass on those favorable traits to the next generation. So over periods of time, the population will continue to have more of those favorable traits. And that is basically what evolution is. Okay, evolution is really a deep topic. You can spend like a whole course talking about it, but in a nutshell, that's basically what it is. So let me just give you one example to help you understand it. We have the hummingbird here, and you can see the beak is really, really long, right? So the populations probably have hummingbirds that have beaks that of different size, get different length, long ones, short ones, and maybe they have some medium ones or whatever. Okay, and then the flower that they get the nectar from, right, has a really deep pouch. So this this kind of hummingbirds with the short beak, they won't be able to get the food, right? Because it's not long enough. So what happens is they get less food and therefore they have less energy and they might not be able to reproduce as often as these ones. So over time, right, if these guys are not reproducing often enough, then you are not going to be making birds with short beak anymore. And over time, the population will shift towards birds that have the longer beaks. Okay, same thing for camouflage. Maybe there are two kinds of zebra. There is one that looks like this, the pinkish white one, and then there are like the bright purple ones, right? And the bright purple one stands out from the background. They get eaten more often. They are not able to survive and reproduce, and so they will basically be disappear from the population and you end up with only seahorses that are able to blend into the environment. Okay, so what's really important to know here is that individuals do not evolve, population does. Okay, one single organism is not going to change to become more adaptable, right? But the population will evolve as a whole, right? So evolution is what's driving these new variants to come out during the pandemic. Okay? It's basically the virus evolving, right? If the virus changes so that it doesn't get affected by the vaccine anymore, then those are the viruses that can infect people and make more of the same viruses, right? And eventually the virus population that is circulating is going to consist of mostly ones that can evade a vaccine. And that's why you need a booster. That's why you need a new vaccine, right? So that's it for the characteristics of living things. Does anybody have any question at all about anything? All right, so let's take a quick break. We will resume at 1:35. If you think of anything, please feel free to leave me a message in the chat box. Otherwise, take a quick break and we'll do more afterwards. See you in a bit. All right, and we're back for the second half. So we spent quite a bit of time in the first half talking about what living things are, and hopefully by now you are more informed about what they are and how you can use different characteristics to decide whether something is living or not. So let's take a look at the second part of the definition for biology, which is the scientific study of living things. What do we mean by scientific study? Well, the word science is derived from a Latin word meaning to know. And you will find out that a lot of the science terms that we use are actually based on Latin words because that's the language that was used when science was first a thing, right? Science is basically a way of understanding what's going on around us by asking questions, by inquiring the things that we see happening around us. Right? Human by nature is curious about ourselves as well as the world around us. So we ask questions um, to things that we don't understand, and in trying to find out the answer, that's basically what science is. Right? So maybe we're not as curious as we once were when we were kids, but we're still curious about different things, like how if you hear like a clicking noise going on in the middle of the night, you're gonna wake up and you're gonna find out where that sound is coming from. That's curiosity, right? So maybe a little bit spooky, but still, right? That inquiry spirit is what drives science, basically. So there are two scientific approaches that we're going to be looking into. First one is called the discovery science, and the other one is hypothesis-driven science. I think we only have time for discovery science today. We'll see, but we will definitely finish up next class. Discovery science. That is basically based on observation. You are just looking, and you're not changing anything, you're not touching it, you're just observing and recording what you are seeing. That's essentially discovery science. An example of that would be observing the effects of global warming. So we can see that, oh, there are increasing incidents of natural disaster as a result of global warming. Or you can see that, the polar ice caps are melting, the sea level is rising. All these things are discovery science because we're not changing anything. We're just like observing what's going on. In some cases, you're not able to change anything. Like if you think about astronomy and you're looking in a faraway galaxy or something, right? All you can do is observe. There's nothing you can do to change it. It's light years away, right? So that's example of discovery science. In terms of biology, we can also have discovery science. If you observing some new animals, how they behave or something like that, right? You're not manipulating the animals, you're just watching. That's discovery science. So when we are making observations, when we are recording our observations is what you're seeing, right? We can make two kinds of observations. We can have qualitative observations, or we can have quantitative observations. So qualitative observations, the word qualitative, it's related to the word quality. So when you buy a new shirt or something, like how do you know the quality is good or not? What's one of the first thing you do when you buy a shirt? Like you walk by in the store, you see a shirt and you like it. How do you know if it's good quality? What are you gonna do? Look at the material. Yeah, you feel it, right? You touch it, right? To see how it feels. You feel the quality of the fabric, right? And that's how you can remember it. Qualitative, it's like feeling the quality. We use our senses in qualitative observations. So we have 5 senses. We can see things, we can smell things, touch things, we can hear things, and we can taste things, right? Of course, not all of it is going to be applicable. It depends on what you're observing. You don't necessarily have to use all 5 senses. In some cases, like buying the shirt, you're not going to taste it, right? It makes no sense, right? So it has to be context appropriate, right? Now, our senses are kind of limited. For example, our sight, we cannot see very, very small things. So we can use tools to extend our senses. We can use microscope to help see very small things. We can use telescope to see things that are really far away. Right? So there are different instrumentations that we can use to broaden our senses so that they can so that we can make observations that we otherwise would not be able to. So let's take some notes. Take out a piece of paper if you have, and this will be posted online as well in case you miss it. Let's write down some qualitative observations. Okay, so qualitative is senses only and no numbers. That's the biggest thing. Okay, no numbers. So let's start with sight. What kind of description can you get just by looking at something?
Beautiful.
Okay, so you might think something is beautiful. Yep, sure. Anything else? Yep, color. Yep, that's good. Anything else? Like think about the phone. If I ask you to, describe my phone, right? What are you gonna say? Shape, okay. Brightness, sure. Like I guess if you were observing, uh, yeah, like something that produces light, you can talk about the brightness, sure. The weight would be number though, right? Okay, the weight would be number. Like it weighs 70 pounds, right? So remember, qualitative is no numbers. Okay. What else can you tell? Just by looking at something. Looking at texture would be something you feel, right? Okay, yeah, you can describe the movement of something. Probably not about my phone, but like, if you see something else, you can describe its movement. Okay, so that is the site. Okay, I'm gonna put another one like the state of something, as in like, is it a gas? Is it a liquid? Is it a solid? Right? All these would be example of qualitative observations that you can make with your sight. And Amina says smell. Smell is another senses that you have. Okay, so what are some description for smell? Huh? What? Like think of like a lemon. How would you describe what would it smell like? Okay, so yeah, there could be like a sour smell. Okay, what other description? Can be sweet, sure. Not necessarily a lemon, okay, but like anything at all.
Bitter.
I'm not sure if something can smell bitter, but yeah, it could taste bitter. Okay, bitter, we'll put bitter here for now for taste. Pungent, yes. A strong smell, very pungent. Um, Anything else? Maybe 2 more for smell. Foul, yeah. Oh, I like that one. No odor, odorless. Okay, it doesn't have to smell like anything. Okay. All right, that's good. Taste, smells rotten, sure. Let's put it in there. Yeah, so for taste, you shouldn't taste anything in the lab unless you're asked to. So it could taste bitter, it could taste sour, it could taste sweet. What else can it taste like? There are two more tastes. You have you have 5 different tastes you can tell from the tongue. Bitter, sour, sweet. Spicy is actually not a taste. It's more like a sensation, but yeah, sure, I'll put that in. Salty, yes. And there's one more. Taste bland, sure. There's one more called umami. Umami is Japanese for yummy. Right? You have a umami receptor. Anytime you eat something savory, think like potato chips, instant noodle, or like a piece of steak, right? The umami flavor is there. Right? You have a taste bud for it. Okay, so that's sight, smell, taste, feel, right? Touch. Okay, if you touch something, give me some description for things that you can touch. How would you describe things that you're touching? It could be rough, good. Rough, bumpy, sure. Smooth, okay. Okay, maybe one more, 1 or 2 more. Soft, yeah, okay, yeah, I like that one. Haven't heard that one yet. And maybe one more. Good. That's exactly what I have in mind. Sharp, right? That's good. And finally, like hearing, right? This one might be not too applicable. Like unless you're like observing some kind of animals or something, you're like, oh, what's the mating call of this bird or something, right? Okay. Yeah, sure. Loud, right? High pitch, right? Anything else for hearing? Like in chemistry, you might say a popping sound. Um, if you did chemistry before, you might remember testing for hydrogen, right? It's like popping sound. Right? But like this is very octaves, yeah, like high octaves versus low octaves, sure, right? But like I said, hearing is usually in very specific scenarios. Okay? So are we okay? Like, do you understand these are qualitative observations? If I give you something on a test and ask you to use qualitative descriptors, these are the things you will use. Okay? No numbers, no numbers. So let's go back to here. We have a picture here. Right? It doesn't matter what you're looking at. You might think you know what you're looking at, and you might be right, but it doesn't matter. Right? We don't care what it is. I'm not asking you what this is. I'm just asking you to describe this picture using qualitative observations. Okay, like obviously you can't really touch it, smell it, or anything, but like use some imagination. Right? Give me some words. How would you describe this thing? Okay, so I have a private message. It says gray, sure. Color is gray. Anyone else? You can also private message me if you don't want the whole class to see your answer, okay? Just participate whenever you can. It's gonna be better for you and it's better for me. Oval shape, sounds good. Okay, some people say it's round. Crowded, okay? Long-ish, okay? I like that one. Anyone else? What about the texture? I know you can't touch it, but like just by looking at it, what's your feeling? What's the gut feeling of this texture? Right, some people say fuzzy, soft, smooth. Anyone think this is rough? My morning class, everybody thought it was rough, and nobody thought it was soft, gooey, maybe. Okay, maybe it's hard, right? Like it's like you don't know, right? And so that leads to a point I'm trying to make. While qualitative observations are good because it doesn't require special instrumentation, you can just anybody can make qualitative observations. Okay, but the biggest problem, biggest drawback of qualitative observations is that it is subjective. It depends on the person. Right? Sometimes what feels soft to you might feel hard for another person. Okay, what smells good to you might smell, not so good for someone else. Right? It's like every time we go to the mall, when we walk by, it's called the Body Works, right? I think like they have very strong scented soap and whatnot. It gives me headache. Like I was like, oh, that smells horrible, right? And I say it every time. I don't know why. It's just a reflex. I walk by, I was like, oh, that smells horrible. But my kids, they're like, no, it smells so good, right? So it's very subjective thing. It depends on who's, yeah, Bath and Body Works. Like, I can never remember the name. I just remember how bad it smells to me, right? So it depends on the person, right? It's very subjective. And when it comes to science, we don't really want things to be subjective in some cases. Sometimes we need to have accuracy, right? We need to have a more reliable way of making observations. And that's when quantitative observations are used, okay? So quantitative are measurements, okay? And they involve number. It uses numbers. So if we are both using the same instrument and we both know how to use it, let's say we're both using the same ruler and we both know how to use a ruler properly, you measuring the phone is going to have the same measurements when I do it. If you measure this and you're like, oh, this is 10 centimeter, and then when I do it, it should also be 10 centimeter, right? Whereas for the qualitative stuff, it's really subjective. Sometimes you might like, oh, this feels heavy. And then someone else picks up and like, oh, no, it feels pretty light, right? So, when we do numbers, it's objective. But when we do feelings, senses, it can be. It's not always subjective, but it can be subjective. Okay. Like all of us agree that this picture is grayscale. It's gray in color. Right? Nobody's gonna disagree with that. Like someone say, "Oh, it's red," we know they're wrong. But when it comes to the shape and the size of these things, then it might be a little bit subjective. Yeah. So this is a picture of some bacteria, and when we look at microscope images, it's usually useful to include a reference, right? So you will see like a line here, and then we would say this line is 10 micrometer. So for those of you who don't know, UM is micrometer. You will learn this in math later, okay? So it's not a big deal if you don't know it yet. But 1 meter is a million micrometer. Okay, 1 meter is a million micrometer. So with a reference like that, you can take a look at this guy and you're like, hey, that looks like I can fit like 2 of them here. So if this white line is 10 micrometer, then this is probably around 5 micrometer. Now, is that super accurate? No, not really, but at least you'll be within the ballpark, right? Like you would know like this is definitely shorter than 10. Okay, and more than 2, I would say, right? So it narrows the range. Whereas without a reference, then it's anybody's guess. Right? You wouldn't know. You wouldn't have a reference. Okay, so let's write down some quantitative observations. Quantitative. All right, so what kind of things we can use numbers to describe? Yeah, sure. Weight, right? Mass, volume, very good. And what if you put mass and volume together? What additional information can you get? Just wondering if anybody knows. Like if you put oil and water together, oil goes on top because it has a lower, what's the word I'm looking for? That's okay. Density, right? Density is mass over volume, right? So that's number. We can calculate it. Dimensions, length, width, height, depth. Maybe two more. What else can you measure? Sure, speed. One more, please. Anyone?
Temperature.
Good. Sure. Population size. Velocity, sure. Velocity is basically speed, but with a direction. Okay. So yeah, all these things would have numbers involved, and they would be considered as quantitative. So everybody okay with qualitative and quantitative? Any questions before I continue? Everybody happy? Okay. Great. So when we make a bunch of observations, then we often will try to make some kind of conclusion based on the the observations that we make, right? Actually, you know what? Let's go back to here for a second, right? So let's say you make observations number 1, whatever it is, observation number 2, observation number 3, observation number 4, and you keep on making a bunch of observations, and they could be related observations, and then you take all of them and you come up with a generalization. Okay, you come up with a generalization. This kind of logic, right, going from specific to general, this is called inductive reasoning, okay, or induction. Taking what you see and then coming up with a generalization. That's induction or inductive reasoning. Let me give you an example to help you understand. So, I took my kids to Dollarama for back to school shopping, and my younger daughter, she's in grade 2 now. She wanted to buy this eraser. Okay, so she came to me and she's like, "Hey, I found this eraser. Can I buy it? But it doesn't have a price tag on it. Like I don't know how much it is, but can I buy it?" And then I was like, "Okay." I was thinking, right? I was like, let's teach her about inductive reasoning, right? So I asked her to take me to the aisle where she got it, and I asked her to look on the shelf, right? I was like, "Hey, how much is the ruler?" And she's like, $2. Right? There's a price tag on it, $2. How much are the pencils? $2. How much are the paper clips? $2. How much are the stamps? $2. And then after a few more, she was like, "Oh, everything here is $2." Right? So you understand? Right? Making individual observations, right? Ruler is $2, pencils $2, paperclip $2, $2, right? $2, $2, $2, and then they come to the generalization. Everything on the shelf is $2. That's inductive reasoning. Okay, and we do that all the time. And we every day in our everyday lives, right? We make all these inferences and we try to come up with generalization. Now, is she correct? We don't know. Okay, like maybe not everything is $2, but that's not the point. The point of inductive reasoning is based on our observation, we think this is probably true. I'll give you another example. Let's say you look at the wings of a fly under the microscope and you realize they are made up of cells. So fly is made up of cells. And you look at a tree and you're like, oh, tree is made up of cells. Look at a mushroom, you see the same thing. these are real, okay? Like obviously these are not, but the pictures are real, okay? Mushroom is made up of cells. Okay, birds is made up of cells. Fish is made up of cells. What's your conclusion? What's the generalization? Anybody can come up with a general statement for me. Everything has cells, yeah, almost. Although I would take it a little bit further. Like not necessarily everything, right? Cell is important to living beings. They are all made up of cells. Okay, we're getting there. Warmer, warmer. Okay, let's try to refine it a little bit. Almost there. What's a logical conclusion from all these things? Thank you, Isabel, okay, and Mina. Living things are made up of cells. Okay? All living things. Made up of cells. Do you guys understand? Right? That's inductive reasoning. You take individual observations and you try to generalize it. Okay. Maybe one more example, I guess. I don't know, like some of you may be confused. Like you know, last month I ate strawberry and then I get this rash. It was so itchy. And then 2 weeks ago I had strawberries and I got very itchy again. Okay. Yesterday I had some strawberries. Today I feel all itchy again with these rash. What's a logical conclusion we can make based on these observations? Yeah, I'm allergic to strawberries, right? Okay. Yeah, exactly. Right? You understand? It's just taking things that you observe and then coming up with a reasonable conclusion. Now, the conclusion might not be correct necessarily, but that's not the point. So that's inductive reasoning. If you have a question, you should ask now because I'm going to teach you deductive reasoning and it's going to confuse you if you don't already fully understand this. Anybody have a question for me? Excellent. So, deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning is when you take your generalization and you apply it to a new situation. You apply it to a new situation. Right? So going from general back to specific. That's called deduction. Okay, or deductive reasoning. Back to the example of my daughter. Once she realized everything on this shelf is probably $2, that's a generalization, then she can say, oh, because I took the eraser from this shelf, even though it doesn't have a price tag, it's probably also $2. You're applying the general statement to a specific case. So even though I have not looked at an ant under the microscope, but because we said all living things are made out of cells, an ant is living, so it must also consist of cells. If I look at it under the microscope, I probably will find cells as well. Okay, that's deductive reasoning. All right, I'm going to show you an application question. So again, on the test, you have standard multiple choice. Those are easier. And then you have harder ones. This is an example of a harder question. Not every question will be like this, okay? There will only be some that are like this, but that's an example of an application question. I will give you a moment to try it out with the polls. All right, that was over a minute. Maybe try to pick something and then we're gonna take it up, okay? All right, I'm gonna end the poll. And we'll take it up together. Which of the following is an example of deductive reasoning? Help me out here, guys. Deductive reasoning, is it what is it? Like, is it from general to specific or specific to general? Deductive reasoning. That's right. Deductive reasoning is from general to specific. Okay, so we should look at which one starts out general. General would be like, all living things are made up of cells, right? Everything on this shelf is $2. So first choice, all viruses require a host to replicate. That's general statement. So this could be the answer. We don't know. Okay, we got to keep reading. Next one. COVID-19, HPV, Ebola, influenza are viruses. They require a host to replicate. Therefore, all viruses require a host to replicate. This is going from specific to general. So that is actually inductive reasoning. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for deductive reasoning. Next one, all viruses require a host to replicate. So again, we start with a general statement. This could be it. We don't know. We're gonna have to keep reading. COVID-19 is a virus and it requires a host to replicate. Ebola is a virus, therefore it also requires a host to replicate. That's not true, right? That's not what we're looking for. This is just going from one example to another example. Okay, so there's no generalization or anything like that. That's not the answer. Okay, so is it A or is it C? Well, when you look at this, they look very similar. Right? It's almost identical if you don't read it carefully. So I'm going to use some highlighter here to help you understand the situation. So here it says all viruses require a host to replicate. Basically, it's saying, if yellow, then blue. So here, COVID-19 is a virus. It must require a host to replicate. So you see, the logic is the same. Virus, then it requires a host to replicate. So COVID-19 is a virus, then it must require a host to replicate. This is the correct answer. Now, what is wrong with the third one? Let's use the same analysis. All viruses requires a host to replicate. All right, so the general statement says, if yellow, then blue. And then it says COVID-19 require a host to replicate. Therefore, COVID-19 is a virus. Right? The next sentence says if blue, then yellow. The logic is reversed. That's why this is not the answer. Right? This is wrong logic. Now, it might be hard to understand in this particular example, but let me write it out using something else. Okay. Let's say all birds have, what do all birds have?
Wings.
Yeah, wings. All birds have wings, sure. And then bees have wings. Therefore, what's my conclusion? Bees are what?
Are birds.
Bees are
Birds.
birds. That's right. But of
Which is-
course, we know that's not true, right? I hope you know bees are not birds, okay? But let's take a look here. All birds have wings. If yellow, if yellow, then blue, right? And then it says bees have wings, therefore they are birds. You see? when you flip the logic, it no longer makes sense. The deductive reasoning is wrong. So that's why the answer is A. Okay? Now, I don't want you to get like overwhelmed or scared, okay? Again, not every single question is going to be like this on a test, but there will be some questions that requires you to think a little bit deeper, okay? After all, you do have access to your binders and you know whatnot, right? So we have to level the playing field a little bit, but it's never going to be unreasonable, right? All the questions are going to be quite, you know, within the scope of what we learn. Yeah, that's okay. If you need to go, you can go. We're done anyways. Okay. Someone just messaged me and said, you know, they have to go. Yep. So that's it. I think we're gonna stop here for today. Basically, just one more slide. At the end of Discovery Science, you know, I was saying like we can't tell whether or not our conclusion, our generalization is necessarily correct, right? Maybe not all living things are made up of cells, okay? So we have to do more testing to actually find out, right, whether it's true or not. And the process by which we test our generalization is basically the scientific method. Okay? It involves making observations, asking questions, and then doing a hypothesis, and so on and so forth. So next class, we will go into more details about what this scientific method is, yeah, and then we'll go from there. Will you be posting those notes you were writing? I will be posting these ones, okay? But the ones that I scribble on the PowerPoint slide as we go, those I cannot save, okay? Like I don't know how to do it. It's just gone when I exit. Is that what you were? Okay, great. Yeah, that's it, guys. Okay, so thank you so much for coming. And I will see you all on Monday at 12:30. Okay, feel free to email me if there is anything you need. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye.